In 3, 2, 1, and we are live. There it is, currently live. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Weather Center Live. It is 8 p.m. on April 16th, 2024. We are rapidly chiseling through this month. I can't believe we are now beyond the halfway mark of the month of April, which means we are only a month and a half from the fateful arrival of the 2024 hurricane season. And yes, there will be a mid-April tropical update segment towards the back end of this live stream. So if you are here for that stream, feel free to tune us out until about the 8:30 time frame. Or stick around as we begin to discuss exactly what's unfolding over the severe weather realm as of right now. We've had a bona fide tornado outbreak occurring throughout much of the day today. A lot of us who've been discussing this offline, behind the scenes, and internally here in the Weather Center, we're right on the money in terms of today being a lot more catastrophic than yesterday. Yesterday was believed to be the main event. Today has actually unfolded to be the opposite. We've had a number of tornadic reports, and if I'm not mistaken, according to our Storm Prediction Center totals for the day, at least in terms of the storm reports, we are approaching the 16, 17 number total for tornadoes. So definitely a bona fide textbook outbreak. You only need about 6 to a dozen tornadoes within the same synoptic driver. In this case, it's the big old low in the center of your screen right here that's slowly moving up towards Minnesota right now. And this is exactly why I believe it was the day before yesterday, Sunday, when we did the live stream, I had discussed with you guys, we're going to hold off on exactly determining where a lot of our severe weather is going to unfold because it is going to be heavily reliant on the track of this low. And already, just like time and time again, all of our models were predicting this low was going to move across like this. And we're already seeing it deviating from that track. I'll go ahead and draw it in yellow. We did see it originate in roughly the same area. However, you look at where the center of the low is currently, we are definitely moving to the north and a little bit further towards the northeast as opposed to almost a bona fide easterly direction between 90 to 70 degrees if you were looking at a compass rose. We're kind of more on a trajectory at about 50, maybe 45 degrees if you were to look at the actual angulation of the track of the low, and that's going to be a huge determinant of where our severe weather occurs tonight. You can already see that we have our severe thunderstorm warnings occurring in that eastern quadrant of the low. That is, if you guys remember, where the triple point currently is. I'll go ahead and release the ink or delete the ink so we can go ahead and draw that out for you guys. If our parent low situated right here, this would be our occluded front, that purple front we see typically on not Storm Prediction Center, WPC's Weather Prediction Center's charts, and you can see where the cold boundary is down and through here, and then that really good confluent flow. Nice call right there as well. Helps to identify where our warm sector is right there. So textbook barotropic, soon to become barotropic system. I will go ahead and say textbook mature wave unfolding right now. And if you guys remember, I had mentioned to you during our Sunday live briefing that the triple point of this low height center, this low pressure at the surface, was going to be pivotal in terms of where our severe weather unfold. And actually, with the way I've drawn my analysis, it fits stupendously in here. Right beneath, if not right around where that triple point is currently unfolding. So, excellent look. Definitely right on the money in terms of that prediction, that synoptic analysis. And I really don't think we're going to see too much else outside of in that fine area of the synoptic forcing right over that triple point. Now, right now I have the CAPE. It's a little difficult for you guys to see, but there is CAPE, satellite-derived CAPE, underneath our sandwich overlay. And the only reason I'm using sandwich, guys, is because I like the name. It's the sandwich satellite imagery. It's just perfect. And it gives me a little grumble in my tummy. But anyways, excellent infrared overlay here so we can see exactly how intense where our strongest thunderstorms are in relation to the low and our frontal axes. And you can see the streamlines do a wonderful job of identifying exactly where it is we need to pay close attention to our weather activity. And I brought that up earlier in my TikTok update for my folks who follow me on that platform as well. So this is more or less where a lot of our severe weather is going to continue as we get into the early overnight hours of tonight. We're going to lose that surface-based instability. That convective heating of the day is going to go away. In fact, it's already after 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, so they should be coming up very soon on sunset out there. So I don't really think we're going to see a resurgence of anything stronger outside of this little pink box that I've drawn. We shall see. There is still some pretty decent sporadic thunderstorm activity that's occurring along the leading edge of of our front. You can very easily see it. We still have a really good ample moisture source. Looking at the streamlines down out of the Gulf of Mexico, we are definitely tapping into our Caribbean and our Western Gulf, getting those warmer waters, warmer dew points, relative humidity up in front of this system where it belongs. But when I take you through some of the model and analysis data, you'll see that this whole quadrant of the system is going to start to really, really weaken, especially as our low pulls further and further back into the cold sector of its surrounding jet. We also have windy.com pulled up as well, just so we can take a look at exactly what's happening at each millibar level and better get a handle on, or get a better handle on the dynamics associated with this mature system as it continues to slowly, looks like it's slowing down, which is another great textbook indicator that this system is going to start to really wrap back into the cold sector of the jet, the poleward side of it, and we're going to see a lot of that energy transpire off towards the east with that triple point and the baroclinic zone, as opposed to this barotropic system that's going to be moving up into the Dakotas towards Minnesota. Looks like it's on a beeline right for the heart of Minnesota, as a matter of fact. Looks like it's taking a kind of a path like this towards the center of Minnesota, so they'll want to watch out for some possible cold core convection overnight. Nothing really serious, just some garden variety, moderate, if not maybe an isolated stray severe thunderstorm, depending on how much of that wraparound cape can stay in the center of that circulation. But it also looks like our upper level temps with this system are going to start to modify as well, and we shall get into that. Linda, good evening. How close are we? Welcome in. Matthew F150, what's up, brother? How are you guys? We're doing okay. It was a rough day at work today, but you know what? We got through it. We're here. We're live with you guys. Joseph Parton, welcome in. We've had about 6 confirmed tornadoes today. Yep, and we had a few yesterday and a few the day before, I think. No. Never mind. Anyways, I know that we're definitely above the dozen threshold in terms of our overall observed reports, with a few repetitive reports on a Storm Prediction Center actual reporting page, the preliminary outlook. So we're going to get more official numbers as we go through tomorrow, and they might even update our totals as we go through Thursday. Looks like we are not too active severe weather at the moment. No, I mean, we definitely were. We definitely still are. It's just a very localized area, very, very close to that triple point and where the bisection of our cold and warm sector are, which is exactly what we were expecting, exactly what we were highlighting here on the Weather Center. There's a few folks out there who still think that there's going to be a lingering tornado threat through here for the rest of the evening. I am not too heavily sold on that. I really don't think so, and since the chat does seem like it's going to be very intimate tonight with all the storm chasing and other live streamers going on out there, we're just going to roll right into this. So this is what we have on Storm Prediction Center's outlook this evening. They haven't really changed anything, at least as far as I'm concerned. I don't really think anything has updated. Let's see. Nope, nothing has updated. We're still looking at the same preliminary outlook that we've had for pretty much most of the day. This is going to be us tomorrow. We have a slight risk, a level 2 risk for parts of the Midwest, Southeast Michigan, the northeast and eastern halves of Indiana, and then most of Ohio is going to be under the gun for severe weather. I do think there is a little bit of a potential resurgence that could occur during max heating of the day, our favorite terminology here on the Weather Center, especially based on that line of activity that is currently trying to press through right now. Everything is out of phase, though. Everything is very, very badly out of phase. If I go back to the satellite image, the Cape actually does a phenomenal job of highlighting this. So this is our main squall feature, our initial push of cool, dry air in the cold sector of this system. And our Cape, if you notice, I'll use a different color so you guys can see, is all displaced back behind it. We are way out of phase. Our supercell parameters are back here. Our SIG-TORM parameters are back here. Our Cape instability, both in the low, mid, to upper levels of the environment, are back here. All we have here is just our really good dew points, relative humidity. They're just kind of kicking it by itself. So we're out of phase. It's a matter of if this pocket can continue to work its way towards the east and line up perfectly with daytime heating, to where we can get some more thunderstorm initiation across the Midwest, the upper half of all of our states. One of the previous systems, we had mentioned the lower half of each of these Midwestern states were going to be under the threat zone. Now I'm thinking it's the upper half, especially if this low continues to translate and arc up like this. We're just going to see that threat zone wander further to the north with it. Look at all this excellent confluent flow between our streamlines right in through here. Same thing with down over here. Excellent tool, streamlines. It's wonderful once you get the hang of analyzing for them and understanding what it is that they're conveying at what level. So you can really paint a really solid picture of where it is your severe weather is likely to occur looking at just the confluent flow down in the surface, the convergent wind flow. And then now we'll get a little further in time. We're going to talk long range as well, because I saw it highlighted on one of their charts not too long ago. SPC had, I think, either a day 5 or a day 6 designation, and they have since dropped it. Predictability has gone too low once again. We'll examine that threat. And then, like I said at the beginning of this video, if you guys hang tight with me at about the 8:30 time frame, we're going to transition over to our mid-month tropical update, because we got a few things I want to describe to you guys and talk you through, because there are some things that are going on in the tropics, both in the Pacific and the Atlantic, that truthfully a lot of our other sources are not telling you guys. And they're not necessarily bad, they're not necessarily good. It's just stuff that I want to relay to you without, simply fixating on historic hurricane season. There's other finite variables that we're going to dig into, and I have a plethora of notes that we're going to try to fit into this one live segment. By the way, Silver Steel S, a phenomenal thank you, a huge thank you for the $20 donation. I sincerely appreciate it. It means so much. Kevin Rivera, welcome in tonight. Carmen Poole, thank you so much for making it into the stream. That is for certain. It's great to see your username popping up, your profile name popping up in the chat. It's going to be a very intimate group of us tonight. I really don't think a lot of folks are going to be joining in. YouTube is likely going to choke and asphyxiate this channel with all the other high action activity we have going on out there. Storm chasing in Iowa. The Dominator team is out there intercepting. They did intercept earlier today. Very exciting. I watched that video again and again. Had the textbook Drop It Down screaming by Dr. Reed Timmer. So trademark storm chasing intercept video. One day, hopefully we can get there. We also have Ryan Hall. We have good old Evan. We did have TRG going off the chain for a while. I don't know how some of these people can do it. I ain't got no time for that, or ain't nobody got time for that. There were some folks on the stream for 6, 8, 12 hours. Ryan Hall and them, that makes sense. I mean, shoot, they're earning thousands of dollars as they do it through chat donations. But you know what? We're going to stick to our regularly scheduled programming here in the Weather Center. So we're going to talk about day 3 here. We have a slight risk through the Ohio, Mississippi valleys, trying to drape back through Texas and the Dixie Alley area, the Texarkana area, which could be something that we highlighted. I think it was yesterday in my talk update. It looks like there's some energy that's going to try to slip its way out of northern Mexico into southern Texas and slide up towards the northeast. So we shall see exactly what that's going to do. We'll talk about it here in detail. Let's move on over to windy.com. So Windy, I think, also shows us a wonderful representation of where it is our most significant weather is going to occur. I swear by the streamlines. The streamlines are excellent. Here's our upper low. I call it an upper low and a barotropic. It does look like it's taking on barotropic characteristics just because of that broad circulation that we have there in southern South Dakota, the extreme uppermost quadrant of Nebraska. Definitely off track, though. We are 100% off track. Looking at this level, this millibar level, I'm not too sure if I'm still at 850. I was putzing around with Windy on my laptop. I don't think that it is translated over to here. Let's see. Is this 850? Nope, this is definitely the surface. So, yep, our low is definitely off track. We were initially anticipating all of our models, and I can show you guys as well. We're thinking we were going to see a track like this, which would make sense. If I were to draw it in red here, that would mean our severe weather sector is going to travel somewhere like so through here, obviously, with a little bit of an appendage dangling down on the southern side because of our front and little embedded vortices or troughs on the back side of this system. But now we're way up here. We have deviated at least 200 to 300 miles, if not more than that, off track. And I do anticipate if we extrapolate it forward as it pulls back into the cold air of the polar front jet, the poleward side of the jet stream that's supporting it, we're just going to continue to see it wander up towards the north, and our severe weather threat is only going to go further and further downhill. And by that, I mean trend down for our Midwestern locations, Illinois, Indiana, Columbus, or Ohio in general. I was reading Columbus right there. I don't know why I naturally did that. Joseph Parton, thank you for the $20 donation. Shucks, maybe I will stay live for a little bit longer if you guys keep the generosity going. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm playing. Thank you very much. It means sincerely a lot getting the donations here on the chat. I've been working feverishly hard trying to put together a brief tonight, and we're going to cover as many of our bases as possible just to give you guys a bit of a breakdown. This is what I have in store for you. So this is page 1, page 2, page 3, And then finally, page 4, there's no backside to it. These are front and back pages too, ladies and gentlemen. We're starting off with our days 1 through 3 and the predictability of our severe weather threats there, and then we're going to expand on that for the lower 48 for CONUS, and then we'll take our trip out to the equator area of the tropics. And I say the equatorials because we're going to be going from the Atlantic to the Pacific and back. So follow along as we take a trip around the globe, ladies and gentlemen. You are flying Weather Center Airlines this evening. So anyways, we have our barotropic system, mature system. You can see a really nice area of confluent flow right in through there, which I think lines up spectacularly with where a lot of our severe weather threat is still ongoing. Really good confluent zone right in through there. Some weak confluence right up in through here, and a little bit more right there moving through Illinois and Indiana. And I bet you if we were to click on over towards the radar currently, it would probably line up really wonderfully. And then take a look at this really good corridor of strong winds coming straight out of Western Canada. Excellent wind flow in terms of where our cold advection is occurring. This is your inactive front for the folks who tuned in on Sunday. I'd mentioned the little bit of anatomy, if you will, the physiology behind these low pressure systems. This is your inactive front. The active front is down towards the south here, and notice how the wind flow becomes a lot more erroneous. You have a little bit of the terrain influences in New Mexico, the Front Range of Colorado. That's impacting how much air movement or advection we have towards the southern half of the frontal system, and I don't really think it's going to be able to penetrate this return flow that's still surging in off the Gulf. Really good onshore flow down there thanks to our Bermuda high, we'll call it, out over the western Atlantic off the southeast coastline of the Carolinas, Georgia, Jacksonville coast of Florida. Silver steel, wow, look at, I can't help but big ol' smile. Dang, wow, that's the biggest donation I've ever gotten on this channel. The biggest donation I've ever gotten, and I'm going to love that one. I didn't even know I had the capabilities of doing that. I just see a little heart, and I figured I'd click it because it just meant the most. Dang, Silver Steel S. I got to take a picture of that. I'm going to take a picture of that, and I want to share it with loved ones, friends, and family for sure, because that just means so much what you guys do to support this channel. I can't tell you, because that's once again going right back into this channel. And as a matter of fact, with this increased revenue, I want to get on the ball with getting a hotspot plugged in and set up for the car as well for when we get back into chasing, especially as we get closer to hurricane season, because, shoot, like I said at the start of the stream, we're already halfway through April. I feel like April just arrived, and now we're already with, what is this now, like 45 days until the start of the hurricane season, possibly sooner before we start picking up on tropical activity out there. One Nation Weather, thank you kindly for joining the stream tonight. It's good to see you. Glad you can make it in. I was in there in your stream yesterday. I was collaborating with ONW yesterday during his live stream, Live Weather Center segment for the Severe Outbreak Day 1. Let's see. Twilight Firefly, thank you for joining. It's a pleasure to have you in here. Same with Judy Tokos. Thank you for once again joining us this evening. So that is a little bit of our synoptic analysis brought to us by windy.com and what we have on the satellite imagery with the multitude of overlays we can pull up on College of DuPage, which is a wonderful website. There's so many different overlays that you can use on their satellite, and this is going to come in handy the rest of severe weather season and into the tropical season. I'm going to continue to mess around with these and come up with pre-configured overlays that I can brief to you guys as we cover the different pieces of the anatomical structuring of these different types of storm systems. Chow Nguyen, welcome in. Yeah, $90 in total. I can't believe that. That's phenomenal. It means so much. That's honestly almost more than I've made in a month with YouTube in a period of time, especially since hurricane season dropped off and people really haven't been watching the Weather Center as of recently. So let's move into a little bit of our model data. We're going to talk models, as James Spann would say, for our model fans out there. This is exactly why we're going to continue to see this storm system weaken, or in terms of our severe weather coverage, even the moderate level thunderstorms out there are going to start to taper off. Notice at the base of our system, in the southeast quadrant of our low at 500 millibars, we have a pretty superb jet max. That is a potent jet max, and you can see in the kinking and the contour gradient pattern here, there's our shortwave trough supported by it wonderfully. This lines up excellently. It's a textbook example of where our jet max from the polar front jet supports our positive vorticity out ahead of it. You can see a lot more of that difluent flow in that right front exit region, which is exactly where these strong thunderstorms are unfolding. But notice if we go just simply 12 hours into the future, look how that puppy just completely dissipates. completely dissipates, and you can see that our upper low itself moving right into Minnesota. It looks like the 18Z NAM has a really good handle on it at this point. Moving right into Minnesota, that low pressure begins to broaden out, which means we are starting to weaken. We're losing that really good influence. So I think it's only a matter of time before our severe weather coverage completely dies. And then this is what I think they're highlighting for tomorrow's risk. If you notice, we have another embedded shortwave around our low right in through there. Very, very weak, almost difficult, almost impossible to spot if you aren't used to seeing these little indications and whispers on larger scale model data like this. But there is a little bit of an embedded vortmax, might even be just a minor shortwave couplet that's rounding the south side of this system, getting pulled in by that next area of strong jet energy that's coming in across the Pacific Northwest, the upper Intermountain West, coming out of Western Canada, supporting this other baroclinic going barotropic system that's actually going to bring us a bit of a cool blast down out of Canada, and it's going to help to bring away, or not bring away, but wash away some of these very, very almost summer-like temps that have been engulfing a lot of the southern plains, the southeast. We were in the 90s. There were a couple spots of 100-degree temps in Texas, so we're going to have to watch that closely. That is what I think Storm Prediction Center thinks could bring our next bout of severe weather, but I'm not 110% sold on it, because as we go even further through time towards the tail end of the NAM run, notice we have some pretty predominant zonal flow across the central portions of the United States. We're going west to east for the most part. Really robust jet level winds, so we'll probably see a little bit of enhanced activity with this. We're probably still bringing in some good moisture, some good instability from out of the south. A wonderful subtropical ridge that's set up. Almost looks reminiscent of our monsoonal pattern out there for the southwest. So, yeah, I mean, we're going to continue to investigate, but I'm not hard sold on anything big happening after this event tapers off. We'll see. We'll definitely see. We move on over here to this is our 700 millibar vertical velocities, and you can see where that major shortwave trough out ahead of that system continues up through Minnesota and Wisconsin up towards the Canadian border. That is where a large majority of our activity is going to propagate, and we get a little bit of lift out ahead of that system, some diffluence in the upper levels that's going to help to keep our vertical velocities in place. But I think this is more or less highlighting what could try to manifest itself depending on if we can tap into that instability, that cape that is lagging back behind our main area. This could possibly be that resurgence in thunderstorm activity as we go through tomorrow with that weak minor shortwave coupler right there. You see it plain as day right in through here, a little weak minor shortwave that does seem to take on a bit of a negative tilt right there. Even at 700 millibars, it's very pronounced right there. That's what I'm looking at. And you can see the really good upward vertical velocities out ahead of it. So we shall see. And then here's our next system, really good cross-barrier flow. This could be a downsloping event for Wyoming, Montana, and Colorado that we'll have to pay attention to. You can see the downward forcing on the lee side of the Rockies there, which is indicative of that downsloping momentum transfer occurring on the east side of all of our higher Rocky Mountain ranges. And then here's that little bit of energy trying to come up out of our remnant, I'll call it, subtropical jet, because El Nino is officially dying out. We'll talk a little bit about that as we move towards the back end of the stream. I don't even know what to say at this point. Thomas Dellinger, $10 donation. Linda with the $10 donation. I'm going to go ahead and let me take a second. I'm going to like all these, and I'm definitely going to recap this live stream. I can't thank you guys enough. I really can't. Wow, that means a lot. Normally I'm one for all the words, and I really have no words at this point. I'm speechless. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to see that. It really brings me up after somewhat of a rough day on the job today. Not only could I not cover the severe weather event that was ongoing over the plains, all the tornadic activity, but, even though it's not a very rigorous position, today was just very mentally brutal. There were some very rude people I encountered on the phone. One person I wanted to call back and almost risk my job because, I thank God that my professionalism shines bright and it's almost wired in because of my military background and just the way I was raised, my discipline. But when you professionally try to reach out to a person who is needing, medical assistance, has things that they have going on, you introduce yourself and politely ask if we can go ahead and get you ready for your appointment, and the person just gives you a big ol' F you right out of the gate, that makes me mad. it really makes me mad, and I don't let anybody talk to me like that. I'm liable to catch an assault charge if somebody were to say that to me face to face. I'm not even joking. There's a reason why I love to practice and train my boxing. That's just a little bit of insight on the day that I had today, but I had a massive FU hurled in my face over the phone, and it took me a little bit to kind of simmer down after that. And that was towards the back end of the day when I'm already just trying to survive the shift, get ready to congregate with you guys, and putting together the last little pieces of my briefing for you. So anyways, let's move on. I can definitely tell you we're going to end the evening on a very, very positive note, and it's thanks to you guys. Big time thanks to you guys, and even the folks out there who aren't donating. Don't think that I'm not thinking about you guys either. I know that YouTube is in a very high traffic state right now, and so it means the world to me that everybody who's in here right now, our 39 viewers, I don't care how small or how large the chat is, it means a lot that you guys are taking some time out of your Tuesday to join me for the discussion, as opposed to just tuning in for other folks who are covering the live streams and so on and so forth. And then last but not least, as we look at that system continue to kind of work its way up towards the north, if you look, our temperature discontinuity at 500 millibars is going to start to weaken as well. You can see it is going to be absorbed by that cold pattern, that colder pattern that is coming in out of the northwest. And I'm going to start utilizing this chart a little bit more often, especially with these cold core upper lows, these bowling ball troughs, as a lot of folks mention. I don't see anyone using it, but what we're looking at here is our 500 millibar temperatures. And the reason this is important is because obviously our polar front jet is 300 millibars. We're going to have the stacking down of those cold temps that create the jet stream in the first place. So if you want to look at your overall instability and your overall gradient and what kind of turbulent mixing you have for your thunderstorms, you may as well look above the surface as well, and I don't see too many people doing that. So I'm going to start utilizing this 500 millibar temp overlay as well, at least for the rest of severe weather season, to see what kind of gradient we have aloft in terms of if we're going to have that cold sinking air interacting with our warm dynamic air down at the low levels, because that's what's going to create that really, really robust updraft, that instability, that cape, not only your surface-based cape, but your ML cape, and so on and so forth. I live in Iowa City, and the winds were nuts with the second round. There was also pea-sized hail. I can definitely imagine, for sure. Thank you for joining us as well, Alfalfa Bill Enjoyer. It's good to see you in the chat. Super Charas, welcome in. No problem. No worries about the donations. It's excellent to have people in here just supporting. That's what it matters most to me. And honestly, the donations are just fluff, icing on the cake, and they always circulate right back into this channel. I can promise you guys that wholeheartedly. So after that, we go forward in time, and you can see that we're going to have a fairly west to east gradient in the upper levels. You have our subtropical ridge trying to dominate, for lack of a better term, the southern half of the U.S., and then we have our bona fide polar air sinking in out of Canada, hitting the upper tier United States. That's really going to help to intensify whatever tries to take shape on the surface. Really good jet level winds screaming across the heart of the country, west to east from Nevada, the Pac Northwest, through the plains and back up into the Midwest, the Great Lakes, before we get into a difluent quadrant in eastern Canada, south of James Bay. And then finally, we're going to look at our frontogenesis, or our temperature advection at 850 millibars. Going back to what I'd mentioned with that 500 millibar temperature chart, we want to go back down to the mid-levels and then finally the low levels of the environment so we can see where our lower level warm advection is occurring. Because as I'd mentioned to you guys a few live streams ago, you have your cold air that is very steep, and then you have your warm air that's very shallow. So as that shallow warm layer tries to build in underneath that cold pocket in the upper levels, that's what's going to help to create that lift and turn the atmosphere upside down for all intents and purposes. And you can see a large majority of our warm advection, or strongest warm advection, is going to be right about where that triple point is, and that occluded front continues to get stretched out. And that's where I do think our severe weather quadrant is going to remain throughout the night tonight. We could have some moderates, some Swisses coming out for the Midwest, parts of Missouri. We've seen a little bit in Arkansas earlier the day today, Illinois, Michigan, and then tomorrow we'll have to be paying close attention to what exactly happens out there, because you can see that little weak shortwave. Even here at 850, you can see it as well in the contour gradient pattern. I'm looking right here at that very weak trough. You see that little bit of acceleration in the winds at 850. There's your little trough, I'll call it a major shortwave. That's big enough. It's a mesoscale, it's mesoscale in size. You can see it take on a little bit of a negative tilt as it moves through the Midwest, the lower Great Lakes, and then spins back up into our parent low right there, and then disappears, and it becomes Ontario and Quebec's problem. Not like I'm saying that we don't pay attention to you guys as well, but we at least kick it out of the United States AOR. All right, we are now 30 minutes into the chat, so we are going to start to slowly shift gears. When you do go storm chasing, is there a wish list you have? Linda, that is a wonderful question. So first and foremost, to try to get my own iteration of the Dominator storm chasing vehicle, aka Betty, as I like to call her, my chase vehicle 2.0 for hurricane season, there are a few things that are still needing done, and they're just a little pricey, unfortunately. I want to get some aluminum under chassis bracing and some under paneling for that car to slap up front and protect all the innards, the life mechanisms, and the heart and organs of that car, because right now, because it's on air suspension, it's completely destroyed. There's nothing. It's a bare naked engine bay at the bottom. So if I'm going to go storm chasing, especially in hurricane season, I need that aluminum under tray and under paneling. I also want to get some protective plastic sheaths for all the airlines that run underneath the car in case there is debris on the roadway. If I have to go through some, deep in water, I don't want anything cutting the airlines, because then we're grounded, especially if we're in the bad situation. We don't need that car to lose all of its air pressure, and then I can't move, and we're just going to have to, God forbid, whatever happens. So a few things. That really is about it. Then I need to figure out how I'm going to waterproof the hood while keeping it breathable, because it is a turbocharged vehicle, so it needs that exhaust ventilation to keep the hot air out of the engine bay. Twilight Firefly with the $10 donation. We are on a roll tonight, folks. I cannot thank you enough. Shoot, at this rate, we're going to be able to get the last little bit of storm chasing stuff we need, especially the lines and the protective covering for underneath that car. And then, Linda, to finish up, the biggest thing I want to get is going to be a hotspot for when I stream for you guys. Hotspot is one of the big things. That's like my number one priority right now. This way I have consistent signal and Wi-Fi on the run as we're moving around these very volatile situations. And then everything else is more or less like extraneous. I'd like to get a couple of action cams. My buddy Andrew, who visited a couple weeks ago, introduced me to a 360 action cam that I think would be phenomenal for any kind of storm chasing event, because you can pan it 360 degrees around as opposed to having one camera here, one camera there. You can just pan, get a full 360 view, but these are on the wish list. They're not necessity. Necessity is obviously protection and connectivity. But all right, before we segue into our tropical discussion, this is where we are at, which, by the way, right out of the gate here, I'll move my head out of the way real briefly so you guys can see. This guy right here is what's been dorking up our tropical sources out there. Everybody's talking about this big old weather feature out there in the Atlantic. It is a tropical wave, but in my humble opinion, it is not, massively worth writing home about. In my opinion, it is, extraneous. It is nice to see. It's interesting, but for some of the sources out there that are making it such a big deal, like, whoa, it's not that ominous of a sign. However, it is bringing some heavy rainfall and some windy conditions for our folks out there in Dominican Republic, Hispaniola, Haiti, Puerto Rico, the U.S. British Virgin Islands, the Turks and Caicos, which I got to go ahead and brush up on my tropical and Caribbean meteorology, because at the rate we're going to be in hurricane season tomorrow, it feels like. Joseph Parton, good Lord. Wow, that's honestly, that's right there. That's the under tray for this car. I'm not even joking. I've been, if I can be brutally transparent and personal with you guys, I've actually been low-key stressing with looking at the time and trying to figure out how I'm going to throw finances together to get Betty outfit. 'Cause I gave you guys that promise. I told you guys we were going to outfit that car. This way she stops collecting dust in my garage. She used to be my show car, my race car. I have a separate Instagram out there just named David Nazario with 2 A's, and it's still sitting around 13,000 followers. But before the pandemic, that car was my love, my pride, and my joy, my everything. Took her to all sorts of car shows, took her to all sorts of events. She had such a wonderful sponsorship backing, which, to tell you the truth, I've even tossed around the idea of reaching out to companies that are still on that page of my old Instagram and asking, would you guys be interested in maybe continuing our sponsorship agreement and slinging some parts my way for a storm chasing vehicle, an off-road build, not a show build. I mean, you can still take it to shows and be cool, but this is going to be a totally different direction. So maybe that's something I'll leave on the table, but wow, Joseph, everybody, just you're making life a lot easier. You're ironing out some things I've been really, really high-key stressing about behind the scenes, and I really wish there was more I could do versus just sitting on the live stream telling you. Telling. I guess the number one thing I can do is fulfill all the promises and the itineraries on the to-do list, the things on the to-do list, my main objectives of the mission here, fulfill them and follow through to bring you guys that content and that up-close and personal perspective, that professional insight, when the time comes. So thank you very much for that, extremely. And yes, Carmen, you can't forget the energy drinks. The energy drinks are going to be crucial. In fact, when we go on our next storm chase, I want to make a funny compilation of, preparedness. Who needs preparedness when you've got your energy drinks? We're ready to rock and roll. Get out there in the field. Alrighty, guys, before I start getting all emotional and I derail the chat and we end up here for another 3 hours, so let's go ahead and look out through time. So there goes our first storm system, and even the European model at 12 Zulu earlier today shows that by Wednesday night into Thursday, our system is really going to lose a lot of its luster, and we're going to see it become more or less just some remnant shower activity as it progresses into Quebec, Ontario, and the eastern half of the system washes out over the mid-Atlantic. We get a little bit of triple point cyclogenesis out there that tries to hold on off the east coast of Virginia, North Carolina, headed towards Bermuda, but that also washes out. And then here comes that surface high pressure blasting through with that polar plunge we'd highlighted on the 500 millibar chart. This is what SPC, I think, is going back and forth about for severe weather, especially right there. We get a little bit of a sneaky front range cold plunge that blasts through Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. We could get a little bit of severe weather out of this. I don't know if it's going to be much, though, because we don't have a trademark baroclinic system. It's going to be a very weak system that comes out of it. Could be more or less a stable wave, trying to go unstable, trying to blossom up into something as it wraps around that temperature gradient along the leading edge of our front. And for you guys who are struggling to mention or kind of pick out what I'm putting down, this is what I'm talking about. So you can see our stationary boundary draped up against the terrain. It can't really penetrate. This would be the remainder of the boundary right there. So there's your front. And right in through here we have, it looks like a stable wave trying to go unstable. So this would be your cold forcing, very, very weak, warm forcing, more or less a stationary boundary. I'd imagine a stationary boundary. We're not going to see too much northerly warm advection looking at these values here, 1024, 1020, 1016. So we still have a really, really expansive, spread out high pressure that's going to engulf much of the Midwest, the Mid-Atlantic, the Northeast. It's going to shut us down in terms of severe weather up there. So for folks who may be watching this stream after everything is all said and done, if you live in the Midwest, the Great Lakes, and you're getting hammered by storm after storm after storm, you're going to get a little bit of a break. You're finally going to get that reprieve you've been asking for, at least 120 hours out. And it looks like we're going to hold steady from there. We get a leak. We get a leak in the system, and we get a weak clipper system that runs through, but that doesn't look like it's going to be much of a severe weather maker. And then there you have it, another potential severe weather event over the front range of the Rockies, getting to the Great Plains, North Central, and Southern Plains altogether that we'll have to watch for. But obviously we're getting into la-la land of the model run, even for the European. So there you have it. We got to get through the rest of tonight, through tomorrow, and then we are golden for a little while anyways. We're still investigating what's going to happen out there over the Southern Plains, the Texarkanas, with that plunge of cold air, outside of cold air coming down. So we'll see. We'll continue to keep you updated as always. One Nation Weather and I will definitely have you guys covered down, as well as a bunch of the other weather sources out there. So here we go. We're going to go over to our ocean analysis first. Like I said, I want to talk to you guys about a few things that some sources are not talking about. And like I said, it's not really, per se anything alarming, or is this going to break, the hurricane season? Not really. So this is what I've been monitoring very closely. This is our 7-day anomaly change. And if you look especially off the west coast of Africa, we are cooling down big time. It almost looks like the Enzo pattern in the Atlantic side of things. The The Atlantic meridional mode is almost falling apart. Dark Earth, hey, look at that. It has been a while. I just noticed your username popping up in the chat. I almost missed you there. It's great to see you back in the chat as well tonight. Thanks for joining us. So if you notice, the Atlantic is cooling off. At least it's trying to cool off. And don't be misconstrued, okay? This is not the hurricane season busting. This is not, everything was overplayed, everything was dramatized, etc. And we'll get into that here in a second. But I also wanted to show you this. If we switch over to our world view again, El Nino just continues to suffer and suffer and suffer. Our cold anomalies are really taking hold. Even into the date line out here, we have nothing but colder temps out there for the international date line across the central portions of not only the equatorial Pacific, but the northern and southern extremities of it in either hemisphere. The ENSO regions altogether are definitely in a very, very weak El Nino state. If you come back here and look at all of our charts here, this is the 3-4. The 3-4 has officially just hit that +5, that plus 0.5, so we are in a weak El Nino. You look at the 1 and 2, the 1 and 2 is crashing again. We are approaching La Nina status almost, it looks like, out there. The 3, right on the cusp of hitting that neutral point, and the 4 is trying to hang on because we have a little bit of mixing still going on out there in the centralmost portions of the Pacific near Hawaii, if you look. Right out here is going to be our ENSO 4 region. We have a little bit of warming that's still hanging on as our trade winds get ready to blast through, and that's exactly what I'm going to take you through tonight to give you a better idea of what's happening in the tropics currently. So, let's see. This here, we're going to start here first. Look at that nasty dust plume off the coast of Africa. That right there, ladies and gentlemen, is precisely why we have such cold anomalies out there in the eastern tropical Atlantic. That's what's going on out there. We have a very, very, very dense plume of sand, and I'm talking very dense. If you look at the values here, our density is all the way above that 1.1 threshold. This is a very thick pocket of sand out there that's just blasting through the Cabo Verde Islands out there, the Cape Verde Islands. And that's exactly why our waters are cooling, because believe it or not, just like with, the whole UV radiation and carbon dioxide, the chlorofluorocarbons in the atmosphere blocking certain parts of the earth, allowing that global warming to take place. This is like a synoptic scale kind of example of it. So what that sand is doing is it's really insulating a lot of our colder temps down towards the surface of the ocean in Western Africa, and it's preventing a lot of penetration of our UV and sun radiation. This is going to finally get out of the way, though. We're going to see some intrusion of that sand through the Lesser Antilles, across the Gulf, across the Caribbean, possibly getting a little bit of that into Puerto Rico, the Windward Islands, I said that already, the U.S. British Virgin Islands. Central America is going to taste a little bit of that sand, and then same thing with the Guyanas or the Guyanas of South America, Venezuela, and Colombia. Going to get a little taste of that sand as well. So that's predominantly what's happening out there in the Atlantic that's helping things stay cool. And I actually have our European ensemble models to finally give you guys a bit of an example of the trade winds out there that play a role not only in our sea surface temps, but with this desert sand. And I'll go ahead and enlarge the image for you guys so you can see. So we're looking right through here, obviously the tropical area. We're looking right across this general area where our easterly trade winds typically dominate the pattern. I've been watching too much Reed Timmer, you can tell. Dominate. They're dominating the pattern. We're dominating across the world. Never stop chasing. For those of you who follow me on Instagram, by the way, what did you think of my my Reed Timmer challenge? Gotta be kidding me, 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 gotta be kidding me. I want to do that one day. If we ever make it big on this channel, I want to do that side by side with him if it's still a thing. Just see who can do gotta be kidding me even faster. So that's where we're looking. We're looking across the equator, and if you look, we have some really good acceleration in our 850 to 800 millibar easterly trade winds across the Atlantic. That's also going to help to cool things off as well. It's the exact same principle of what's happening in the Pacific right now. Our trade winds are picking up, so a lot of that hot water that's more or less stagnant across our El Nino ENSO is being pushed. And because it's being pushed in the uppermost portions, the surface of the Pacific, that upwelling, that cold upwelling is allowing to take place, and that's where a La Nina is coming from. More or less the same concept out here. We have our very, very strong push, our little bit of a low-level jet, if you will, across the tropical Atlantic. And moving across there, we're finally going to lose that increase in our winds, and we're going to see a return to form for our pattern over northern Africa. If you notice, systems are going to sink in and kind of cut that low-level jet off, and this is when I do believe we're going to start seeing a warming trend continue. And look at this big old thing right here. That's 850. These are our Euro ensembles, by the way, and that looks like we could see a very, very, very... What even is that, to tell you the truth? That's very interesting, because it doesn't go anywhere. Is that our... It could be... That could actually, you know what? We will probably start to see warming going on because this is all the way into May 1st. And this could possibly be our very, very strong NAO setting up. That is definitely our Greenland low pressure system spinning up out there and remaining semi-permanent. And take a look at the subtropical high, which, folks, that's another, I don't know if that clap registered for you guys. I apologize if it did. I don't need to ear rape you, for lack of a better term. But I'm also paying very close attention to what our European model is saying here. Check this out. So our NAO is definitely in a negative state here, but look at what we have here. Does anybody see the elephant in the room? I'm going to let you guys figure it out before I draw it in. We will take our time here. I want you guys to bullseye it. We're looking back down over the tropics, and we're looking at one distinct big feature, but we're looking at what it does to the pattern, and this is pivotal for the hurricane season. Pivotal. So I want somebody in the chat. I'm going to go full instructor mode. I want somebody in the chat to blast the answer out to me. What do you guys notice about this 850 millibar wind chart outside of our very, very strong negative NAO? We'll wait. I'll wait too. We still have about 15 more minutes in the live stream, and we'll continue on in a second. But I want you guys to point something out that is very, very lethal. We'll put it that way. Lethal for the hurricane season. And if this is a recurring trend, if this is a telltale sign of what's going to happen through the hurricane season, we are in big trouble. Supercharged, you're halfway there. We are talking about a high pressure, but I want you guys to look closely at the pattern, and I'll go ahead and give you a hint. We'll go ahead and do a little Quizlet thing. I want you to look in through here, and before I go giving away the test answer, I want someone to point out what is exactly going on. I feel like PM, how close are we? One of you guys is probably going to get it. If not, somebody else like Kevin or who else do we have in the chat? One Nation Weather, if you're still there, should definitely get it. Ah, there it is. Okay, Super Charas, you finally got it. Ding, 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 ding. You get 100% on the Weather Center exam tonight. So this is exactly what a lot of the big Mets are very concerned about for this hurricane season. Look at this puppy right here. Look at this really robust subtropical high, and check out that prevailing wind flow through the MDR, through the Caribbean, all the way up to you-know-where. Follow the streamlines, follow the streamlines, follow the streamlines, follow the streamlines. You see that? There's our very dominant high pressure, very dominant subtropical high. And this time I am intentionally saying the word dominant because that is a very dominant subtropical ridge. And, you know, look at that wind flow right there. You could get a number of different tracks out of here, and that is not good whatsoever. Not good whatsoever. That shows big-time Florida Caribbean impacts if this holds through. Now, this is the beginning of May, and this is our ensemble. So, yes, there is a little bit more gravity in this because it is an ensemble. Remember, this is all 50, 51 ensemble members of the Euro coming together to suggest a very, very strong and very, very robust subtropical high. So now we'll have to see exactly what plays out, because if this holds, though, that's landfalls for days, especially once we get into August, September, and October. So that's another piece of the puzzle I wanted to bring to you guys. So the NAO is going to be very pivotal. If we have a very strong NAO with such broad low and high pressures like this, that's a textbook dominant negative NAO, by the way. Look at that really good difluent flow out ahead of it, just completely overpowering the North Atlantic to its entirety. And it looks like our ITCZ is trying to sneak in May. So we'll have to see exactly what ends up playing out. But I am, on the inside, I'm a big fan of this pattern because it means we have a lot to talk about. On the outside, though, for the professional world to see, this is a very concerning pattern. And we'll have to see. And I do agree, Judy, there are some sources out there mentioning that the Saharan dust could be very, very intense. In this sort of iteration, we'd have to look a little bit aloft. Let's see, what does 500 millibars show? Let's see what the 500 millibar winds shows across there to see what kind of a Saharan dust layer. So, I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure we'll have a ton of dust. Let's see. Let's go to the 850 control and see what we have there. So 850 control shows more or less the same thing. Pretty solid prevailing easterly flow across the tropics. This wouldn't tell me very much that, at least based on this, obviously this is the 1st of May, so I wouldn't think we'd have a tremendous amount of Saharan dust out there, because if you look at this low pressure up here, this very powerful low pressure is going to act like a vacuum. All that Saharan, we don't really have a very good monsoonal pattern. The wind flow out here wouldn't pull too much Saharan dust off, and if it did, it would get picked up like so, in this fashion, which is what we saw towards the very middle to latter half of the 2023 hurricane season. And again, even this does not look very good, because we have very, very prominent upper-level features up through here, and then a predominant easterly flow through here that's going to track systems west. So not cool at all. But let's go ahead and move into the final piece of this briefing. We're going to go over to, let me see if I can find it again. I got to see if I can find it. I think this is it. Let's go to 850 millibar winds, and there you go, more or less. This is not the perfect description of it. What map was it? I got to check my notes. What map was it that I had up that shows everything? There was a map on here that I found for you guys that really does an excellent job of showing, is it the North Pacific? Okay, we can use this more or less. This will help us. So now we're back over to the Pacific side of things. And the reason I bring up the Pacific is because I'm going to show you the pretty much death cycle of the rest of our El Nino that's just kicking it out there, trying to hold on to everything it can, clinging on for dear life. So if you guys look, again, we're looking down towards the tropics through this quadrant here. These are our ENSO regions. This is more or less where the 4th is. This is where our 3.4 is, and then we have our 3, and then 1 and 2. And then here's our international date line running right through there. And the 4 is where we need to see a little bit more of these stronger prevailing winds come on. And the European ensembles do a very phenomenal job of highlighting just that. So I think this is going to be the death of our El Nino. Check that out. In the next couple of days, we're going to see some very, very, very strong easterlies kick in just to the south of Hawaii. And that, I think, is what's going to help to finish off our El Nino. And if you look, these prevailing easterlies kind of just stay in that sort of fashion, screaming east to west consistently all the way through to the maritime continents out there in Asia, Thailand, Australia, and so on, especially right here. Those are some pretty decent 24 to 34 mile an hour. No, these are knots, 24 to 34 knot easterlies across the ENSO regions, especially that 4 region. So that's going to help to expedite the amount of upwelling we get. Because if you notice right now, we don't have much happening over ENSO 4. If you guys remember, and I'll draw it back in here again so you guys can use that as a reference point. We don't have a lot happening over our ENSO 4 right now. Look at how kind of dispersed the wind flow is. We still have some really good trade winds occurring across the 3-4, the 3, and the 1 and 2, which is why we're still cooling. But notice that we do have a little bit of distortion in our flow pattern. The prevailing wind flow, the trade winds out there in the 4 region is not doing too well. But as soon as you go about 72 hours out, look at that, whoom, blasted through. That's what's going to help contribute to our upwelling, and it only stays predominantly like that for a very, very, all the way up until the beginning of May. So I really do think at this point in time, you can see that clear wind tunnel off the west coast of the United States as well, coming in from that really strong gradient over the northern Pacific, south of the Aleutian Island chain, screaming down the west coast and then right into the tropical Pacific, into that trade wind flow. So I think as we get through May, not through May, but as we get to May and then into May, we're going to see cool neutral, if not a very, very slow hike into that extremely. I say extremely because obviously, there's going to be small variables that we can't, pinpoint between now and then. This is 360 hours out on our ensemble. So obviously that classic phrase, take it with a grain of salt, stands. But I do think that our El Nino is going to be finished off as we start rolling into May. See how the 4 region is still trying to warm up, but then the 3-4, the 1 and 2 is dying. The 3 is right on the cusp of just completely losing it altogether. The 3-4 is dying. I think we're going to see this go all the way down to close to 0, if not 0, as we get into the month of May, just in time for June. And to tell you the truth, guys, La Nina or not, as soon as we lose El Nino, our atmospheric conditions for tropical cyclone activity are going to go up, period. Depending on how much of that hot water we can retain out there through the Caribbean, the Gulf, the MDR, which also rings a bell. I wanted to bring this up because this actually does make me feel pretty good, I'm not going to lie. If you look at the SSTs here, and I'll go to the North Atlantic, because if you guys remember back in the day, this was something else we highlighted on this channel. I'd mentioned to you that I am really going to be looking for a majority of our Atlantic activity through this area. That is going to be my number one priority grid box right there. That is where I'm expecting a lot of our development, and then the rest of it is, remains to be seen. It's fair game. And with these cool anomalies trying to take hold off the East Coast, or I should say in the East MDR, the West Coast of Africa, that puts our most robust temps right in that grid box, courtesy of you by the Weather Center Nazario. So there you have it. There you have it. And we'll have to continue to watch what happens with our NAO, because I do think if our mid-latitudes and the subtropics stay as cool as they are, we're going to have a much more prominent NAO positioned out there, which is trouble for driving these systems off to the west. And on top of that, losing El Nino is going to prevent us from weakening down that subtropical ridge, that surface Bermuda-Azores high, like we saw last year. Because if you guys remember, a lot of the time, all the weather folks out there were talking tropics, hyping up West Coast storms. Because of our El Nino jet cutting across like this, our subtropical ridge and our surface high pressure reflection was more or less looking like this all hurricane season. It was very bizarre looking. It was very, very weirdly north to south oriented as opposed to more west to east and elongated. So that's what allowed a lot of our systems, Lee, Philippe, Rena, majority of them, Margot, who else, Sean, everybody out there and their mother was just going up like this, whatever. We had I-Diddly-Doodah that randomly snuck in under the radar there with Harold, and then Ophelia that popped off. But a large majority of our folks out there managed to stay out in the Atlantic. Now, if we get rid of this, and here we go with my crude kindergarten Crayola drawings again, if we get rid of El Nino, the general thinking is you can see this trying to wrap around and become a bit more of a dominating. I got to stop saying that. I thank God this isn't a drinking game. How many times did Weather Center Nazario say dominate in his stream? We'd all be dead by now. But because we're going to lose this and our jet is going to be positioned a little bit further to the north, it's going to allow our subtropics to become a bit more characteristic of what they would during the summertime. Let's put it that way. So I do think we're going to have a greater chance at landfalls. There's a lot of folks out there, and I still personally believe it's an injustice to viewers. I will stand firm in that. And when I go to that conference next week, I will tell people to their faces if I see them that you need to be honest. You need to be honest. You need to tell folks what it is that they need to hear. And the writing's on the wall. I do think this could be a bit more of an impactful hurricane season. Yes, at the end of the day, we can't predict landfalls to the state, the city, etc., to a geographic point. But if we're not predicting fish storms, there's only one other direction they can go. They're not going to go backwards and go back into Africa. They're going to come one way or another. And I do think that big names out there who get 60, 70, 80, 500,000, a million views need to start advertising this to their people. Because they're not going to believe me. They're not going to believe CSU. They're not going to believe NOAA. They're not going to believe NHC. They're going to believe the YouTuber, the weather content creator that they follow. And everybody out there, everyone, I'm not going to name names, but I'm literally saying everybody who has made a tropical video, ONW, you're not included in this because obviously we haven't started our tropical coverage just yet, at least full-fledged. But every other source out there who are responsible for focusing on the tropics has said exactly verbatim the same thing. We don't know where they're going to go. Every time they've said that verbatim. We don't know where they're going to go. We don't know where they're going to track. And I think that's a fallacy. We don't know specifically, like I said, to the coordinates that they're going to track, but we can see that the signals are telling us we could see some more long trackers. We could see a lot more Caribbean development, and that in of itself right there. The fact that none of these sources are mentioning really that the Caribbean is going to be open for business, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. If you form a storm out here, obviously you have a pretty good margin of error that thing's going to turn away from everybody. But if you form a storm in here, and no matter what direction you turn it in, it's going to hit somebody. You're basically looking at bowling pins at that point. And that's kind of exactly what I've been trying to communicate to everybody who watches this channel since December, January of this year, last year, is if we open up these two source regions that were untapped, I don't care what it does, we could see something go dipsy-doo-dah and do something like this through the Caribbean, but it doesn't matter. It's still going to hit somebody. If we had something to go like, we will out here, then obviously nothing's going to happen. You take that same storm and you move it here, and it goes, it changes the name of the game. It changes the name of the game. So I really wish that bigger names out there who have a greater gravitational pull on their viewership than folks like myself, ONW, and even some of the other smaller channels who are trying to make a name for themselves, bringing to you that realistic, timely, accurate content, they need to start being dangerously honest. And I say dangerously because you're going to piss people off. You're going to have people turn you off. You're going to get the infamous hype comments, fear-mongering, but at the end of the day, I'd rather be looked at as a fearmonger for telling you guys the straight-edge truth versus telling you, we don't know. It could be anybody's game when, as a scientist who obsesses over this 24/7, even in their sleep, they have dreams about hurricanes and whatnot. I cannot confirm or deny that has happened to me before, if you guys can put the context clues together. But, the writing's on the wall. The writing is on the wall. And I'm not saying, Florida, Jamaica, Antigua, Puerto Rico, the Turks. I'm not saying that to the micro scale are going to see impacts. What I'm saying is we're going to see a more generally westward track. We're going to see areas that saw no development last year see development this year. And even that by itself already increases exponentially the chances of a landfall. And I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it. My skin is thick enough at this point to where if people want to get mad at me for trying to tell them, look out, and think that I'm just trying to go for the views, then I don't know what to tell you. Turn me off then, because at the end of the day, if I'm bold enough to say turn me off, obviously it's not for the views. It's for me to try to tell you before it's too late. I'd rather tell you now that the chances are elevated versus the classic, it looks like we could potentially be seeing a landfall and there's already a hurricane on your doorstep. Anybody and their mother can tell you, yeah, you're probably going to get hit by a hurricane when there's a Cat 5 within 100 miles of your location. It's now, and Mark Sudduth on Hurricane Track, I actually shot him an email and I've been trying to coordinate some collaboration with him, which I'm hoping, big fingers crossed, that I can finally connect with him and get a little bit more collaboration going between him and I, because I love his content, and he's very straightforward with it as well, and I don't see anything wrong with it. As many times as you guys have seen me get upset on this channel about hype, scare tactics, clickbait, etc., for me to say that a source like Mark Sudduth, there's never been a time where I've been like, nope, never, not once. And I really hope one of these days he watches some of my content, because I do. I give him big kudos. Same thing with ONW. Same thing with a few other sources out there who I will watch, and there will never be a point where I'm like, what? No, most of the time it's, my antenna are up. My antenna are up, and I'm listening. So we shall see. Lord willing, we can do a collaboration. And I even told him via emails, like, if you don't want to do anything live or anything in a video format, because, I don't want to look like I'm self-promoting. That's not what this is about. I even said that verbatim in my email. You can fact check me. I'll share you screenshots if you want me to. I even said, if you do not want me to do anything on the channel, if you don't want anything physically put on tape, to avoid being looked at as another self-promoter, then that's fine. I just want to talk, pick your brain, and share some opinions. And I think that's what's critical before something as big as this could possibly be, So that's it, guys. We're going to go ahead and start wrapping the live stream. We are at 9:03 p.m. It's been a long heck of a day, and I still haven't eaten anything yet, so we're going to go and have some dinner here in a moment. I cannot thank you enough for the huge donations tonight. In fact, I'm probably going to roll out. Let me do that real quick. Let me go ahead and I'm going to do this. I'm going to roll out a YouTube short shouting you guys out. I'm going to actually record the chat so I can go back through and see who dropped donations tonight. So this way I have you guys written down. I have an archive of it, and I can shout you guys out. So there's Joseph Parton. There's Twilight Firefly. There goes Linda, Thomas Dellinger. There goes Silver Steel, Joseph Parton again, Silver Steel. You guys were on a roll tonight. There we go. Got them. Perfect. So I have that recorded. Be on the lookout for that shout-out little short video for you guys. I'll definitely shout it out on my other platforms as well, TikTok, Instagram, you name it. Because it goes without saying, I want to try to give back to you as much as I can, and it's going to go right into not only Betty, but this channel, especially with those big donations tonight. You guys have been the answer to my prayers big time, and I don't say that lightly. So, and yes, I know, we do. I'm falling behind the curve on trying to do that. I have things storyboarded. I have things written out. I just need to decide if I have enough time to venture out and shoot it in the platform or the venue that I want it to, or if it's just going to be a talking head video like this. I don't want it to be just another talking head video. I want to venture out and shoot evacuation routes, shoot flood areas, shoot storm surge prone areas, shoot department store visits, shoot gas station visits. I want to shoot everything and make it as, broken down as possible for viewers far and wide to understand what it truly means to be prepared. And ONW, this tropical depression just took a mega wrong turn. I know exactly what video that is, and oh gosh, this tropical wave is still threatening. Oh god, yeah, people were very quick to jump on that train last year, and I have a bad feeling this year is going to be Danny DeVito in disguise. So anyway, I started blasting. But alrighty, folks, thank you for being a spectacular audience this evening. Not just a wonderful, not just amazing, but a spectacular viewing audience tonight. It has been an absolute joy. You've really turned this night around for me for certain, and I'm going to go to bed with very positive feelings, more inspiration to work that much harder for you guys. I'm going to wake up with more pep in my step tomorrow, and I'm going to keep notating, writing things down, studying and researching my butt off to just stay ahead of the game and try to give you guys the content before it starts spilling out by the wayside and it's too late. So I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday evening. It is April 16th. We are now in that real downward descent towards hurricane season. Lord willing, between now and then, I can bring some collaborative efforts to the channel. We can start having more discussion boards, get that podcast rolling, and finally unveil some preparedness stuff for you guys. Maybe I'll set a new deadline of May 1st, but to be determined, don't hold me to that. We will see you again soon. Stay safe out there for my folks up there getting battered and blistered by the moderate to severe weather activity. We're riding it out. We're almost done. This is the back end of it, and we'll see you again very soon. And until next time, you know the phrase. This is Weather Center Nazario, signing out.